Well, we're getting more details about the stabbing and, I would say, attempted assassination of one Derek Chauvin in a Arizona federal prison. We're being told now by the authorities, if they are to be believed, that Chauvin was stabbed a total of 22 times by a man by the name of John Tursak. Now, my theory, and it wasn't a very difficult one, it's not like it was unique, other people thought this, because it's kind of a no-brainer, that this was likely some kind of inside job. After all, prisons are secure places, and assassinations have been carried out in prisons before. Prison guards are corrupt, they are corruptible, and it is well-known common knowledge that prisons are run by organized crime on the inside. And so, if prison gangs such as the Mexican Mafia, which we're going to discuss here in a moment, if they're able to assassinate people in prison, why would let's say the FBI, not be able to do the same? One could say that it's actually convenient for the authorities to have all of this organized crime within the prisons, because then they can plead ignorance when terrible things, when awful ends, or I already screwed that up. I can't speak, excuse me. When certain prisoners meet a terrible end, such as Whitey Bulger or Jeffrey Epstein, both of whom I referenced in the previous video on this topic. And so that brings me to John Tursak, who is the man we are told stabbed Derek Chauvin 22 times. He is apparently a former Mexican Mafia high-ranking official. The report that I read from local news in Tucson said that he once organized a coup against the actual leader of the Mexican Mafia at the time, back in the 90s, I guess it was, and presumably that coup failed, or at least he failed at some point, because he ended up in prison for 30 years. But not before snitching on 40 of his closest friends, who he helped convict by working with the FBI, while he was still a member of the Mexican Mafia out in the streets. He didn't just, flip once he was in jail. He flipped while he was still a free man. He worked with the FBI from the outside of prison, that is, to gather evidence and to entrap his fellow Mexican mafiosos. And so this guy's a snitch. He's the kind of guy you would expect to be getting stabbed in prison, not someone who's been able to survive there for, 25 years at this point? Over 25 years. I think I read that he was sentenced in 1997. Oh, and that's because the FBI turned on him. They betrayed him. After he betrayed 40 of his closest friends, the FBI decided, we don't need you anymore. We already got the evidence. So the deal's off. We're going to lock you away for 30 years anyway. Because it never pays to play ball with the FBI. They want you all either dead or behind bars. White, black, brown, man, woman, or child, the FBI's job is to imprison Americans, to kill Americans, to torture Americans. And that should not be confused with the CIA's job, which is to kill foreigners, to imprison foreigners, and to torture foreigners, whether they be white, black, brown, man, woman, or child. Now, a lot of MAGA influencers right now are taking this news as confirmation of what we theorized back when Chauvin was first stabbed. We said, obviously, this has got to be some kind of Fed inside job. A Fed must have stabbed him. This must be part of the FBI's plot. Well, now that I know the details behind the guy, considering he was betrayed by the FBI, that seems less likely. Not impossible, but I don't think that this actually helps my case. I think that knowing the details, this seems like the kind of guy who would tell the FBI to F off. Now, with that said, and to tell them to F off if they asked him to stab Chauvin. Okay. But with that said, this guy, as a snitch, is the most vulnerable type of prisoner. No one should have been under a greater threat over the last more than 25 years than John Tursak, if what I read about him is true. He snitched, and not only snitched, he invaded the privacy, collected evidence, and, acted as an FBI agent himself, gathering evidence against 40 of his fellow gang members. There's a lot more than 40 people who would want him dead. The entire Mexican mafia would want him dead, presumably. And as I said already, they're one of the major prison gangs across America. They control a lot of what happens and what goes on inside the prison system. And so the FBI, or the Bureau of Prisons, has only been able to keep John Tursak alive by keeping him out of Mexican mafia territory within the prison system. And so they very easily could end him at any point, just like Whitey Bulger was put to an end, by sticking him in a room with a bunch of people who want to kill him. Drop him in the piranha tank. It's that simple. And so, even though John Tursak, I think, probably hates the FBI as much as any of us, probably more so since they put him away for 30 years after he did all that for them, after he did their job for them. He was stabbed in the back. They have all the leverage that they would need to coerce him into doing this. And sure, they're going to tack on probably another, 10 years to a sentence for attempted murder of Derek Chauvin, since they are filing charges against him now. Though, interestingly, they're not hate crime charges, but I'll get to that. Sure, they could tack on another 10 years, but that's better than being dead. Would you rather do something in prison that gets you more prison time, or would you rather the FBI just have you whacked? Now, maybe if you're ready to give up, you'd tell the FBI, screw off, go ahead, kill me. I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing on the outside, and I don't want to spend any more time than in this box. So when you weigh everything out, yeah, still most likely seems like this was a Fed stick-up job. On balance, that's what the information would suggest. Now, getting back to what I said about hate crimes, the attempted murderer here said that he did it in the name of Black Lives Matter, and that's why he did it on Black Friday. And so this was a terrorist attack. He was carrying out a violent act in the name of advancing a political cause. Now, if you ask me, having separate charges for things like terrorism or hate crimes, those are descriptive. They're not really, or those are like situational. They're emotional categories. They don't really have anything to pertain to the crime itself. Crimes are things like stabbing, shooting, bombing. But the way our criminal justice system works is we decide to punish people based on their intentions, rather than the acts that they actually commit. And so different acts committed with different mindsets are punished differently. So this guy clearly, at the very least, if you don't want to call it a hate crime, you have to call it what it is, and that's terrorism. This man, most likely, is an FBI terrorist. And he wouldn't be the first, and he certainly won't be the last. So anyway, with that said, I will hopefully see you folks back here tomorrow, but I think it's going to be a busy day, so we'll see.